Hello, my awesome students. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about our WED processes. And remember, WED is just our nickname for weathering, erosion, and deposition. And those are our three processes that are going to cause slow changes to our Earth's surface. So we need to be on page 58 and 59 in our journals. We already have it set up from class. We're going to fill in some notes on page 58. And then you guys are going to read the short reading on page 59. So we're prepared for lab tomorrow. Now, before we talk about those slow changes, remember in class we talked about how some changes are rapid, and that word rapid just means fast. Volcanoes, earthquakes, landslides, those things are going to change our surface really, really quickly without any notice sometimes. But what we want to focus on in class is those slow changes to the Earth's surface that we can't really even see with our own eyes. That's weathering, erosion, and deposition. It changes the surface over many, many, many years. It takes a lot of time to see those changes. The first one we want to talk about is weathering. Okay, weathering is I have a rock, and then that rock starts breaking down into tiny, tiny pieces of rock, which we call sediments. Okay, so when we say weathering, and if I say weathering in class, you're going to say break it down, break it down, break it down, break it down. Okay, that is simply when weathering causes parts of big rocks to break off, and then it's going to fall, and it might fall into a river, it might fall into the land. It just depends. Okay, so go ahead and fill in on your sheet weathering on page 58. You're going to fill in that blank. So it says the breaking down of rock into, and you're going to fill it in with what? Sediments. Okay, so that is our first step of the WED processes, is when weathering, it might be wind, it might be water, it might be ice, hits the surface of that rock, breaks it into small pieces. So now I have a tiny piece of rock called a sediment from weathering, and now it's going to move. So something's going to cause it to move. It might be the wind, it might be water, it might be ice again. Okay, that's called erosion. Okay, so erosion is when that tiny piece of sediment that broke down gets carried to a new place. So when we say erosion, we're going to say move it, move it, move it, and move it, move it, move it. Okay, so go ahead and try that. Erosion. Move it, move it, move it, and move it, move it, move it. Okay, erosion can occur by, for example, wind. That wind picks up that sediment and moves it to a new place. Think about on the playground. Think about outside your house. You've got little pieces of sediment, and it gets moved. So now I have all this sediment eroding and moving and moving. Well, now it's got to go somewhere because the water's going to stop moving or the wind's going to stop blowing. And when that happens, that tiny sediment that was moving, it now has to drop. Okay, and that's what we call deposition. Okay, so deposition is the dropping off of sediments into a brand new place. So it might be that wind carried it, all of a sudden the wind stopped, that sediment's going to drop. Or the water was carrying it, the river stops flowing, and it drops. And that's the example that's shown on this PowerPoint is if it's flowing down a river and then it stops, it's going to form a delta. And we're going to talk more about that. But when we say the word deposition, we're going to say plop and plop and plop. Okay, so let's try it. Deposition and plop and plop and plop. Okay, so we had it weathered, it broke it down, it got eroded and it moved, and then it got dropped. Okay. So weathering, erosion, and deposition can occur due to four main things on our Earth's surface. Water, waves, wind, and ice. So you'll see at the bottom of that page it says causes of weathering, erosion, and deposition on page 58. You'll fill in those four agents or those four factors that cause erosion, weathering, and deposition to happen, and that is water, winds, waves, and ice. And that's what we're going to be investigating over the next few days. So those are our three WED processes. What I want you to do now is read the passage on page 59. It won't take but a couple minutes, and you can highlight the important keywords that have to do with WED. If you do not have a highlighter, then you may underline, use a marker, whatever's going to help you make those words pop. Okay?